Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, at least in a virtual sense. The opening words are from Joanna Macy, who I think probably a number of you know in one way or another, and I'll say a little bit more about her later. She wrote, "Future generations, if there is a livable world for them, will look back at the epochal transition that we are making to a life-sustaining society. And they may well call this the time of the great turning." So welcome again this morning as we begin this virtual service.
Yeah, let me add my welcome to Reverend Alex's. Welcome to our virtual service here. It's nice to know that he's sitting in or standing in the sanctuary, so we can have that memory of what the space feels like, even though we're all here in our comfortable homes. As you can see on the screen, we have the chat box if you have a joy or a sorrow that you'd like to have read later in the service. And if you are moved to donate, we always love to receive your money. And the church, of course, lives and breathes with the energy and the generosity of its members and its friends, and so does the Soup Kitchen, which we also offer this month's Sharing the Plate to. So those are possibilities for you, and you can do all that at the church website. So welcome. Now we're going to light our chalice, not a virtual chalice, but a real chalice. Reverend Alex will light it as we all read the words together. Feel free to join in with me at home in this chalice lighting by Christine Robinson. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. And as you know, we begin each of our services by reading together our affirmation of covenant and mission. So please join with me. Our covenant is to be a loving, joyful community that nurtures spiritual growth, promotes compassion, social responsibility, and service in an atmosphere of mutual trust. Our mission is to be a faith community devoted to love and respect, reason, and justice. And because we can't really all sing together on Zoom, if you've ever tried it, you know it's a really crazy situation, but we can't all sing at home with this amazing singer who will sing "I'm That Great and Fiery Force" for us. So please listen if you'd like, or join in on mute.
The reading is from Karen Armstrong, and it's Karen, by the way, not Karen, because she's British, and that's the way it's supposed to be pronounced. And she wrote this in one of her books on a new axial age, when things would change very dramatically in a fairly short time. She says, "So I feel that we are, all of us, at one of those junctions in history when we are holding ourselves, our past, our future, and our integrity in the palms of our own hands. This is a moment when, if we allow that integrity to fall out, we might never recover it in the same way. Once again, a radical change has become necessary." So as you listen to the homily, please reflect on the following question for conversation during the breakout rooms. Do you think we're in a transformational era in the world? Or you can put it as, do you think you're having a transformational era in your life, in this country, and so on? So, thank you everyone for being here this morning. And Joshua, thank you for leading the service today. And Amy and Kirsten for all of the tech and setting up and the music and all those things I could never manage to do on my own. Thank you. And thanks everyone for being here. Somebody mentioned it when they came in, and I thought it was also a good way that I was going to start. What a week this has been. I didn't have that many illusions that New Year's Day 2021 would change our world drastically for the better. Although I am somewhat an idealist still, and I do think that things can get better. I'd hoped that the new year with fresh beginnings might encourage us to put the dramas and tragedies of 2020 behind us to start anew. There were vaccines, the election is mostly over, and a path ahead. Like many others, I held my breath on Tuesday as the special election in Georgia ended. It looked hopeful that at least one Democrat would become senator. Many of us cheered on when on Wednesday morning it was clear that both Democratic candidates would win the election and shift the Senate to Democratic control. So early Wednesday morning, I had started work on this homily. The opening words and reading today seemed prophetic. And I was thinking, was it possible that a fundamental shift in human relations, politics, and society was underway, if not in the whole world, maybe in this country? Joanna Macy was one of my teachers at seminary in Berkeley. She was primarily working on the anti-nuclear movement in 1989, but I recall her speaking of a transformational time she called the Great Turning. And the class that I took with her was in the fall of 1989, which was an extraordinary time of transformation. Those of you who are older than, say, millennials may remember it, the collapse of the Warsaw Pact in East Germany and Eastern Europe. We saw country after country with huge demonstrations in the streets. And most of the governments surrendered their authority peacefully to the reformers because the Soviet Union was not going to intercede. This included the Baltic states, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Hungary, and so on. And amazingly, which I don't think many of us ever imagined at that time, the Berlin Wall came down. And that was astonishing to so many of us. We never thought that would happen. Freedom swept across Eastern Europe with little violence. The one exception was Romania, where Unitarian churches had been demolished, among many other things. The dictator Nicole Ceausescu and his wife fled the capital. They were captured, given a show trial, and executed on Christmas Day, 1989. Almost exactly 2 years later, the Soviet Union, quite unimaginably, voted itself out of existence on December 26, 1991. It was astonishing. People felt that a tipping point had come for democracy and freedom in the world. The following year, in 1992, and some of you may remember this book, Francis Fukuyama wrote a book called The End of History, which argued that the ascent of Western liberal democracy was the end point of humankind's ideological evolution. And it was the universalization of Western liberal democracy as the final form of human government. And those definitely were hopeful words 29 years ago. Then the next 29 years happened. But this week, especially, that hope was endangered. Wednesday afternoon happened. Remember? I had thoughts like, it can't happen here. This isn't what America is like. Yes, it can happen. And yes, this is what America is like. And in one way or another, it has been like this for 400 years. Now it is all in the open to be seen and heard and experienced. We saw how differently whites and blacks are treated in protests, where the voices are, "Can you hear us?" Not only the protests and demonstrations from this last summer after George Floyd was killed, but also the events on Wednesday afternoon when so many other people were saying, "Can you hear us?" Has been for so many people the American nightmare. So what I was pondering a couple days ago, was this a great turning, as Joanna Macy had said, but instead of moving upwards and forward forever, going into darkness and despair? Are we as Americans or religious liberals and Pennsylvanians, are we powerless in our limited influence as we slide closer to the cliff of failure? Maybe, maybe not. Let's go back to Karen Armstrong's words. Now I'll read them again. So, I feel that we are, all of us, at one of those junctions in history when we are holding ourselves, our past, our future, and our integrity in the palms of our own hands. And this is a moment when, if we allow that integrity to fall out, we might never recover it in the same way. Once again, a radical change has become necessary. So we saw two stories of radical change this week. They were competing with one another. The assault on the Capitol on Wednesday afternoon did not succeed. But the radicalism is still there, waiting to burn us to ashes. It is a fire of anger and despair, and we do not know how it will end. That's not the only radical change on Wednesday. The years of mobilizing efforts by Stacey Abrams in Georgia did succeed on Election Day and on Tuesday. She and millions of Black Americans did not give up or bow their heads in hopelessness. And I would add here that I think Stacey Abrams should get a Presidential Medal of Freedom. But all these people, not just Black Americans or brown Americans and white Americans, they had the integrity that they held firmly in their own hands. They didn't allow that integrity to fall out of their hands and hearts into oblivion and destruction. They kept at it, they kept working, and they wouldn't take no for an answer. And they, all of those people, are willing to share, but not to be beholden to the story of America as what we as white people have created over hundreds of years. Neither should we. Is there a great turning in progress now? One that will cure our ills and lead us out of our human adolescence? Personally, I believe so. That is part of my faith. But I also know it will not be easy or quick or painless. We in this country, and also here in Meadville, face many obstacles. Racism, the climate crisis, our fellow citizens angry and following out of despair a leader who needs to leave. But all that aside, we cannot turn away from what we are called to do. And yes, there is much to be done, more than any one of us can possibly do on our own. And this is why we gather in community as a liberal religious community. Some of us met on a weekly small group Zoom meeting on Thursday, and some of you are here today. We asked one another, what can we do? What can we possibly do to make things better? And we're going to keep talking about ideas for that over the next few weeks and perhaps even all spring. I'll mention one that you probably read on the B&B. Next Sunday, I'm going to start a class using this book by Ibram X. Kendi, How to Be an Anti-Racist. I think it's one of the best books out there. I think it was Jenna and a couple of other people who had recommended it to me. The class will begin at 12:30 on each Sunday, and next Sunday we'll kind of get it together and explain what we're going to do. And if you want more information, look at the B&B and the Oracle, because I think more information is there, or you can contact me. And Jody is the one who's taking registrations for it. But other than that, I think there's a philosophical question to be addressed, going back to our imaginations of what could happen in the best possible ways. I'd invite us to consider this. Can we have faith that the arc of the universe will bend toward justice and compassion for all? Do we still, in the light of what has happened, do we still have that faith? Alternatively, can we imagine that we're experiencing an awakening, like a sunrise? Or are we watching a sunset on all our hopes? And if you looked at the slides today, we have pictures of the sun and the horizon. One of those is a sunrise. The other one is a sunset. Which one do we pick? So as we go into our breakout rooms and ask that question, whether we are in the midst of a fundamental change in the world, a transitional era that will change us enormously. I leave you with the words of Theodore Parker, who was a famous Unitarian minister and abolitionist in the 1840s and 50s. And in a very famous 1841 sermon called The Permanent and Transient in Christianity, he finished with this: choose as you will choose. Weal or woe depends upon your choice. And I think all these years later, those words are still true. We not only need to hear them, but to make our choice and move forward together. Peace, amen, shalom, blessed be. So let's go into our breakout rooms and have some conversation. Thank you.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I can't see if everyone's back, but I believe you are. We have always, in our services, you know, in many congregations around the country, a moment where we sort of stop to honor the joys and the sorrows and the concerns of the congregation. And sometimes they're voiced, or in this case, written in the chat, and sometimes not. So I'll begin by reading what's in the chat, and then we're going to have a little bit of time to reflect on the generosity and the love and the kindness that we can offer to others, and to accept that generosity and love and kindness that's being offered to us. So the one that here is in the chat was from Corinne and Rich. We're happy that our son Tyler has recovered from his bout with COVID, and that's great. So we'll be keeping him in our thoughts. And of course, all those people, millions and millions of people around the world and here in our own congregation who are still struggling with either the fear and anxiety around COVID or the experience of it itself. So let's take a few moments here to reflect on, as I said, the joys and sorrows that we heard today, and those that are in our hearts and that were not spoken. We know that as a faith community, our hearts go out to those in our community and around us, whether or not those thoughts are spoken. We're still here with you. Amen. And now I'll read the extinguishing of the chalice and closing words. Please feel free to join along here as Alex extinguishes the chalice in our sanctuary. These words by Mace Harden. Help us to be the always hopeful gardeners of the Spirit, who know that without darkness, nothing comes to birth, as without light, nothing flowers. Reverend Alex, any final words from you?
Have a good week, everyone, and be safe and healthy.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for coming to the service today. It matters, hopefully to you, certainly to us. And we'll now invite you into some breakout rooms to hang around and have either virtual or real actual coffee. All right, bye.